What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. What do you think?
But what do you
No,
think?
but what do you think? Hi, and welcome to another episode of This Reflects. I wanted to make a video about what would I change with the current state of Path of Exile, and like what do I like and what do I not like about the game. And there are quite a lot of things. And again, this is just like an opinion piece, just like what I'm happy about. Like obviously, I am a very, very dedicated player. I play a large amount. And I normally play hardcore solo self-found, and you know I do no life the game. That matters a lot because somebody playing it casually might want very different things than I. But I figured I'd put my opinion out there, what I like and don't like about the game. We can start with the number one most important thing to me, drops. More exciting drops. I've been pushing for the fact that I would like smart loot to be implemented in the game. Smart loot is basically that items will roll better, more smartly. They'll have a higher chance to have rolls that make sense for the item. And I would love to see a lot fewer rares dropping per map. I would much rather have like 1 to 10 rares drop per map and have those have a decent chance of having like, oh, this one has life and resist. Maybe some more drop only modifiers. I really love what they did with the unveil system, and that being like unveil only or identify only. I think that's amazing, and I would love to see the normal modifiers having drop only things as well. Because I think RNG and dropping things is very fun. I'm not the biggest fan of deterministic crafting, so while Harvest is fun to have now and again at strong powers, I do prefer more like a combination, I guess. Like, I really like what they've done in Last Epoch, where there is like a tier 6 and tier 7 that are drop only tiers. You cannot craft those. And you have to find an item with that on the right base. And I think that's really special. And I wish Path of Exile had something similar. So drop only tiers. And like we have Incursion already. That's sort of similar to that. And we also have the Unveils. But I would love just like, you know, say there was a tier above Merciless that was drop only. Maybe only from tier 19 maps, which you need the Awakener Whetstones at. But I think that would be very, very cool for me. Speaking of drops, I don't feel like there are that many exciting things. I feel like they tried to address that, but did it in one of the worst ways possible. So I've, in previous videos, been saying, like, if you're mapping in Path of Exile right now and just killing things, what can you drop that's exciting that isn't cross-league? And I felt like that was heard, right? I felt like that was something a lot of people in the community shared and echoed, and GGD heard that. And they then made like Headhunter, Badge of the Brotherhood, etc. be able to drop from everywhere. Now, that's not bad. That is maybe a step in the right direction. Like, that could be cool, but not necessarily what I meant. But they did something else that I thought was really, really strange. They moved all the Shaper and Elder Guardian drops into the drop pool. They can drop from anywhere now. I've had a Volcanus drop in like a tier 5 map or something. Things like Brass Dome is just dropping randomly. And that, I think, is, at least for me, the worst change. Because I think the most exciting thing in Path of Exile is bosses having a unique drop pool that is very exciting. And that you need to go there to get the drop, right? If you want a Brass Dome, you need to farm the Minotaur. That should be the only place, in my opinion, to get it. Because I think that adds a lot of value to the game. I talked a little bit about this on stream. There were some people that didn't like that idea, that thought that it would be completely okay if everything could drop from everywhere, and if bosses just would drop like a few pure Exalted Orbs instead, so they could just buy the items they need. That's like the worst possible thing, in my opinion. For me personally, I think it adds so much value if every drop from a boss is unique. You can only get it there, and divination cards for those drops cannot be found from diviners. They cannot be found from stack decks. They should, in my opinion, be... Divination cards could be pity boss drops. So say you're farming for a Dying Sun. I wouldn't mind if the Dying Sun card dropped from Shaper or from Uber or another really hard boss. But I don't like that you can get a Dying Sun by opening stack decks. Personally, not a big fan of that. And something important to note as well is that solo self-fund doesn't really matter for this discussion. Solo self-fund was something Grindy Gear Games added kind of against their will. They were like, okay, we don't really like the idea of solo self-fund, but we're going to add it, but not going to consider it for the balance purposes of the game. Neither are we balancing around hardcore anymore. We are balancing around, for example, now ultimatum softcore, right? Ultimatum trade league. That is what we're balancing around. And I think that's completely fine. As a hardcore SSF player, that is completely fine. It should not be easier or better in any way to play solo self-fun. You're doing this as an added challenge for people that want more longevity of the game. And I think that's reasonable. I'm not a big fan how diviners are on Trade League. I actually think they're pretty good for solo self-fun because there you can't realistically get them out of stack decks and diviners and get them easily. And if you do, then you have to like gamble with the Harvest double divination card craft. So for SSF, that balance is actually pretty good. But now I am playing Trade League and I really don't like that. There's a lot of weird things that got like very, very devalued by them being more common. And let's talk a little bit about boss drop tables. I think the one that they made that was the best was Cyrus, the Awakener Royals. Like if you look at all the drops, right? You have the helmet, you have Awaken Gems, you have every single drop from Cyrus is amazing. Now, when I say amazing, I don't necessarily mean they're valuable, right? You're not necessarily making a profit by farming Awakener because Awakener is pretty easy now on softcore. And in 6 portals, quite a lot of people can kill it. And that makes up, for example, the helmet is probably not worth a lot. And the gloves is probably not worth a lot, right? And the longer a league goes on, there's going to be inflation and more people are going to be able to do the content. So they're not necessarily worth a lot. But all of the items currently are very good from the Awakener. The glove are really cool if you get some good corruptions on them. The helmet is exceptionally good. The Savior is very useful for a lot of builds, especially now with Paradoxia being upgraded. So it's a very, very cool boss. And it has the Awaken Gems, it has the Awaken Orbs, it drops the item bases, just all around actual perfection as a boss. But then you have like Uber Elder, like Disintegrator isn't particularly good. It's clunky, and I feel like there are very few items in Path of Exile that have downsides that are appropriately powerful. Because when something has a downside, I feel like GGD are going, this item is going to be so powerful that it needs a negative thing on it to balance out its power. But then the negative thing is so bad that it's not worth using. Take, for example, from normal Elder, the ones, the only time they were really used was when we could bypass the entire downside by using Traps or Mines. Now that that's not the case anymore, nobody's using them. So they're not really good, and they're very, very niche items that people are like, oh, I'm going to use these as a challenge, right? They're not powerful items that you're looking forward to, and I think that's problematic. I think that's really bad. I think the worst culprit here is the Maven. Whenever a new boss is added to Path of Exile, I get incredibly excited. I'm all about the endgame. I'm all about chasing down those bosses and hoping that they have really exciting items. And then we get to the Maven, and, well, let alone profit, but barely any of the items are usable. There's 1 or 2 of the belts that are usable in some very niche builds. The helmet has some very weird downsides, like having blue rings isn't that great. It would make more sense if it was like, oh, your left ring has to be unique and your right ring has to be influenced or something. But I don't know. That's a little bit... I feel like the helmet downside, while the helmet is a good idea and is strong, it's also a little bit too much of a downside in my opinion. The chest is actually pretty okay, but incredibly rare. That's fine. Chest is good. But basically, Maven in the current state ends up being either you drop the orb or you've lost money. And the items just, they aren't particularly exciting. They're not something that's cool. And I feel like maybe like the power of the slots weren't like dealt with or thought about enough. Like, for example, think about how many powerful belts there are. Even after the nerf, Soul Tether is incredibly powerful. You have Influence, Stygian Vices through the Conquer Orbs. You have just Stygian Vices. They're really powerful too. And you have Headhunter. You also have Ruthless Coil. So, like, there's a lot of power in the belt slot. There are really powerful things you can get there. And so many of the Shaper or Influence mods on belts are very strong. So maybe if the current belts also just added the current charges and on top of the normal ones. So you got like the crazy, like powerful endurance charges plus your normal endurance charges. Then they'd be really, really strong. They would be a chase item from, you know, one of the most endgame bosses in the game. And I think that's okay. I think they should. I think they should have chase and endgame items from the most endgame bosses. Whenever things like Starforge or Voidforge or Disintegrator are like 5 chaos, I'm like... It's... And these are like... These aren't the most common drops, right? Like something like Aziri's Promise or the Crown of the Inward Eye, they might be cheap, but they're incredibly strong. They're cheap because they are the most common item from that endgame boss. The other items are the most, like Starforge is either the rarest or the second most rare item, and it's still like nothing. I don't think that's good. Personally, that makes me really upset as a player. And I just wish more bosses had like really exciting items. Like the Watcher's Eye is probably the most exciting item in Path of Exile. I think Watcher's Eye is just absolutely beautiful. It's so cool. Because it's exciting to drop no matter what. You know that you might identify one that isn't worth a lot. But it's so exciting just to drop one. So Watcher's Eye, they've done a really, really good job with. And there are a lot of cool uniques. But another thing I want to talk about as well. Chris Wilson said that they're adding the Val Reliquary Key. And it was going to be the rarest one so far. And they were going to be foiled. And I don't know where this was like miscommunicated, or at least I completely misunderstood what was happening in this league. I was incredibly excited for this league because they were doing so many like things that I felt I needed as a player, and a lot of them did happen. They buffed Incursion, they buffed like Betrayal and stuff like that. They continued improving Heist. So they've done a lot of good things. Honestly, there are a lot of things I really, really like this expansion. But the Val Reliquary Key was incredibly disappointing for me. I instantly understood that obviously these items were not going to be legacy. They were not going to give us legacy acuity in this league, right? But I fully believed that they were reworking most of the Aziri items because they were so outdated. Aziri's acuity is barely used anymore. You have Disfavor, it's like a leveling unique almost now. Like, you know, start early maps. Because it's so easy to beat just with like Reforged Physical Harvest or Jagged Fossils. So the fact that none of these items got buffed, like you could add 100 DPS to Disfavor and it's still fairly okay to beat with rares, as it should be. It shouldn't be like the end all be all. But the fact that I wouldn't really feel comfortable farming Uber Aziri with the Disfavor, right? And when the item that drops from the boss isn't really viable to fight that boss, I mean, you know, I don't like that. I think, again, like, whenever there is like a pinnacle boss fight, right? One of the main things in the game that people want to farm and go for, they should be powerful. And it's the second rarest drop from Aziri. And I was hoping for maybe to see, like, obviously we got some new cool drops, but I was really hoping that both Disfavor and the Vol Gloves would also get reworked and buffed. The Vol Gloves could have, like, gotten added, like, a few new cool effects, maybe a different keystone. Like, Vol Pact could have been, I don't know, maybe a stronger version of Vol Pact from the Acuity. But either way, I don't really mind what, it's just, they really need some love. It's been in the game for so long. The fight itself hasn't really needed to be reworked. It's still incredibly hard and difficult. So it's a really good fight, right? All you need to do through time is to scale like the damage and life values. You don't need to rework the moves or anything. It's a very well done fight. But the rewards are severely lacking in my opinion. So that was for me very disappointing with the Val Reliquary Key. And another thing that I would really love to see changed with Path of Exile, I don't like that everything is tied to maps. I think it's really, really boring that when they're like discussing, oh, should this league mechanic go core or should it not go core? And they're like, okay, we've decided it's going to go core. How do you ask? 10% or now 18% chance to spawn whenever you open a map. I think that's boring. I think it's boring that we only have one endgame. And that was whenever people asked like, hey, how do you feel about PoE 2? The biggest disappointment for me with PoE 2 was that they didn't like out the gate just go like, and in Path of Exile 2, no longer do you only have to do maps. Now, explore, delve, how far can your build go? Breach World, Beyond World, the Harbinger World. Choose your endgame. What will you explore? Right? That's what I was hoping. I was hoping for Delve to be standalone. Heist could be standalone. A Breach World, a Beyond World, a Harbinger World, all with their own very dedicated endgame that you could choose to explore, right? And here, I feel like I'm maybe on an unpopular opinion because people already feel like Path of Exile is very overwhelming. I obviously play a lot of hours, so I would love different stuff to do. But I think that it would be really, really cool if somebody goes like, do you know what? I don't want to do maps this league. I'm just going to delve. I'm just going to delve all league and sell delve things, and I'll buy the stuff I need from other players. Or like I really want to explore the Beyond world because I get X and Y, but I don't get Z. But so I'll buy Z from other players, right? That is the main thing I really want in Path of Exile. Each standalone endgame. So like for when they made Harvest Core, I was hoping they would make Harvest Core in Delve. That there would be rooms in Delve of like harvest patches, not just like finding harvest in maps now and again. Um, so I don't know. That's definitely like the other thing that I really want. More alternative endgames so that everything isn't tied to maps. Again, just my opinions, just what I would like to see change with the game, and do remember like we might be very different players that want different things for the game. But wanted to make a video about my thoughts, reflect a little bit if you will. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think is a shit idea. Let me know what you think is a good idea and what you guys would like to see. And yeah, as always, sub if you like the videos. But more importantly, try to die less than I do.